All right. What's good, everybody? Take Casey back here. Another video on the NBA offseason. It's time to finally talk about Giannis. The finals are over. The Knicks won in five. Congratulations to the New York Knicks, the Knicks fans, Karl Anthony Towns, everyone, Jalen Brunson in that crazy game five to put it away. Um, that was awesome. So now we're officially in the off season proper here. There's no more basketball. Next thing up is the draft. Trying to sign into the little chat thing here at the same time. I don't know if that's going to really do anything for me or not. Sorry for this. Doing too much at once here. So I want to talk about the Giannis trade teams. We have a couple. Why is it doing all this? All right. You know what? We'll probably just say screw this. It's taking too long. We know a couple of the Giannis rumors. The Giannis rumors have been heating up. So let's talk about those first. We'll talk about where the Bucks are, what the Bucks potentially want, and then some of the fake trades have come up with. And if we have time, we'll delve into some of the other potential. What the heck happened there? Some of the other potential teams that could potentially trade for Giannis. Sorry, I do too much. My thoughts are all over the place here. I've been watching World Cup all day. So the Giannis rumors, my interpretation, understanding of it is basically the Heat have made the best offer. The Bucks don't like that offer, so they're kind of leaking stuff about this is what they would want from Minnesota. This is, maybe they're talking about Boston with Jaylen Brown. The deal's done. They just need a third team. We're seeing sort of stuff like that. So I think what that means, essentially translating, I kind of said my translation is, the Heat have the best offer. The Bucks don't like it. It's not as much as they want for Giannis. So they're trying to drum up more interest, trying to make a bidding war happen. The problem here is while there are teams that could be Giannis suitors, specifically like the Spurs and the Thunder, I think it kind of goes against their team building philosophy. So while those teams could offer the most potential return, I don't think they're necessarily that interested in Giannis. Giannis is 32. He needs to sign an extension. So you're going to sign him to an extension that probably pays him like in the 60 millions for the next few years. Essentially treating him as a max player. He's had injury concerns the last few years. Since winning the finals, I don't know that the Bucks have even got out of the first round. So I think there are concerns about Giannis. They're, slight concerns, but the main thing is that the aprons are kind of messing with the Bucks' potential return. We saw like Mikal Bridges get traded for 5 first-round picks. Rudy Gobert get traded for 5 first-round picks. Giannis is a much better player, but that was in a different system. And if you look at kind of the all-stars that have recently been traded, again, they're much worse than Giannis. But Trae Young got traded for no picks. Anthony Davis got traded for 2 first-round picks. But really, it's no first-round picks if you dig into the details. Dallas got the 30th overall pick this year, so they got the OKC pick, which at that point was clearly going to be the 30th pick. So it depends how you look at it. You can look at it as like the last pick in the first round or the first pick in the second round. It's essentially more of a second round pick than it is a first round pick. And then the other first round pick they got was the 2030, I believe it's 2030 Golden State pick that's protected 1 through 20. And if the pick ends up in that range, then it becomes nothing. So it's just kind of a first round pick on paper. Because in 2030, Steph Curry will be retired. The Warriors have basically got their team chasing one last ring with Curry, and that's going to be a lottery team, almost assuredly. And if they somehow squeak into the play-in or something, they're still protected with that top 20. So both Trae Young and Anthony Davis got traded for no first-round picks. Jaren Jackson Jr. did get traded for 3 first-round picks. But he's younger on the scale. He's going to a Utah team that didn't really have much else asset to train. So I think the NBA is moving more towards player for player sort of trades. Obviously, first round picks will be traded, but I just don't think we're really going to see anybody get traded for 5 first round picks anymore, unless it's the rare situation where like OKC has the draft capital that they have, and there's someone like it would have to be like an Anthony Edwards kind of player, not someone like Giannis that's already in his 30s. So let's jump into the trade teams. We can talk about kind of more scenarios first. So let's start with the rumored Heat package, or at least my understanding of the Heat package. There may be fluctuations here and there, but the Heat have to make the money work, just like anyone. $58 million. We'll see if the trade machine doesn't work. This video will get interesting. I think I can use Fanspo as well. So let's pull Fanspo up just in case the spot track trade machine doesn't want to work. Oh, alright, maybe my internet's just crappy right now. Alright, this did load. Okay, they've updated it a little bit, cleaned it up. So, the rumored Milwaukee Miami package here. You need Hero, more so for matching salary than anything. Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, I think is the basis. We'll see where that puts us for Giannis. Why are these, this is very laggy right now. We'll see if we stick with this. Alright, so then we need another salary. I think this is where Nikola Jovic comes in. It's just the matching salary here. This is very bad. This is not good for making a video right now. Let's see if I can make it work a little better on this side. I haven't been on Fanspo since they updated to the 26-27, so that's kind of nice. Yeah, this is moving much smoother. So we'll use Fanspo this video. We don't kind of get the live updates of if the trade's working or not. Alright, and then they would throw in these 2026 first round pick, which was the 30th over or the 13th overall. I believe they can trade this 29. It's a little iffy. We'll just trade the 31 just to make it clean, because I don't know if they can or can't trade the 29. Alright, and then where's the button? Okay, so for Giannis, the Heat are getting Giannis. They're giving up Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, the 13th overall pick this year, unprotected 31st. And then you get Tyler Hero and Jovic. His contract to make the money work. Milwaukee takes on a little bit of money, so the Heat stay under. They don't take on any of the hard caps of trading more money. They do take the hard cap of sending multiple players out, which means they have to stay under the second apron. But there's no other restrictions other than that. Milwaukee does take back more money, so they're hard capped to the first apron. But if they're trading Giannis, they're not going to be a lottery team, so that doesn't matter. So you can see here, there's not really a blue chipper here. Ware, Jaquez, more role players. Tyler Hero's not a guy that can be the face of your team. The 13th pick, fingers crossed, could be something. You drafted Giannis at 15. I think Donovan Mitchell went 13th overall. Tyrese Halliburton went 12th overall. So it's not impossible, but it's definitely a lottery ticket. Same with the 31st pick. So you can see why Milwaukee wants something better than this. It's just that teams aren't actually offering anything better than this. So one of the rumors we've seen that I think has real momentum is Boston. Essentially a Giannis for Jaylen Brown straight swap is the rumor. But Jaylen Brown's 29. He doesn't really make sense for Milwaukee's timeline. So they would need to flip him to a third team. We're seeing some reports, not from necessarily the most reputable people. They're more just kind of like random Twitter accounts, but I'm just seeing a lot of aggregation of it. That this is like a done deal. So my interpretation of that is that the Celtics have essentially agreed to trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis. Jaylen Brown doesn't fit the Bucks' timetable, so they are trying to find a third team to swap Jaylen Brown to. I also think there is a slight chance that the Celtics see Jaylen Brown as a better value than Giannis, or a better asset, I guess, because Jaylen Brown has 3 years left on his contract. Giannis only has it might even be a player option next year. It is a player option. So Giannis is essentially on a 1 year deal, which means you have to extend him, renegotiate with him, which means he's going to cost more than Jaylen Brown. He's going to be older. He's going to be more injury prone. So I think, even though we're seeing reports that this is a done deal, I don't think it's a done deal because I think Boston is going to want something back. Which means any team trading for Jaylen Brown has to give enough assets to Milwaukee to satisfy giving up Giannis, while also attaching an asset to go to Boston. And I think that's a very rich ask. So the most rumored team I've seen for Jaylen Brown is the Hawks. So let's use the Hawks as an example here just to see what we can put together. And if it makes sense for everyone here. So they would trade those 3 out. The Hawks have enough money, so it doesn't really matter. They have slightly different contracts here than on Spotrac. So Danilo Banton isn't under contract for the Celtics here, so they would have to trade a different minimum contract. So let's trade Amari Williams, just because they signed him mid-season. That's probably who they're the least attached to. So while the Celtics are doing that, that fixes the money here. You can see outgoing now is 59.2, incoming is 58.4. So they needed that little extra salary because Giannis makes about $1 million more than Jaylen Brown. So let's do Milwaukee would get the 8th pick. Let's give Boston the 23rd pick, and then Milwaukee also gets a future. I don't think that. Let's see. This might not work on here because it's consecutive years. Okay, it did work. Perfect. All right. So in this instance, where Atlanta's willing to meet the asking price of both teams, and again, this is all hypothetical. The Bucks get Jonathan Kuminga on his expiring deal. They get the right to renegotiate with Kuminga now. They get Corey Kispert just to make the money work. They get Zachary Richer, who was the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago, but fell out of Atlanta's rotation. They get the 8th overall pick in this year's draft, so Milwaukee would have the 8th and the 10th pick. And then they also get, I believe this is the better of New Orleans or Milwaukee. It might be the worst. I'm not sure exactly, but it should be a lottery pick regardless. The Celtics get Giannis, and they also get the 23rd overall pick in this year's draft. And then the Hawks get Jaylen Brown, and they have to take Amari Williams' contract. If they want it, I guess they could also give it to the Bucks. It doesn't really matter. That's just cap finagling, so the Celtics can be trading less money, or taking back less money than they're trading now. The Hawks would be then hard capped to the first apron, but you can see here they got $50 million in apron space. This is a nice little tool that's on Fanspo here. So Atlanta would be very willing to do that because they're not going to get to the first apron. So that would put them at 4, 6, 8. They'd be at 9 players. So they'd have $50 million to fill the next 9 players in the draft. They're out of draft picks. Or it looks like they maybe have a second rounder this year. They're out of draft picks, but they would have these trade exceptions here at least for a little while. They're not huge exceptions, but you can maybe bring a couple players in with those. You would have your full mid-level exception. You could re-sign CJ McCollum. You could re-sign Jock Landale. Did they get Landale, or did they trade? I can't remember now. Landale's an interesting player if he did finish the season with the team there. So they would be able to field a fairly decent roster. Their playoff rotation is essentially all intact here. Buddy Hield is also partially guaranteed, so they could waive him. So long story short, taking on the money is not going to hamper Atlanta. It's just a matter if Atlanta would want to give up that many assets, and if that's the right amount of assets. So Boston is only getting a first-round pick. It's the 23rd pick in this year's draft. I think they have pick 27. So if they like 2 guys around like pick 27, it would make sense because you could potentially get them both. Same for the Bucks. If you like 2 guys at 10, you get one at 8, one at 10. And I think it makes sense for Atlanta. Again, the question is this return enough for the Bucks? It's maybe better than the Heat return, but there's no guarantee that like the 8th overall pick is going to be better than Khalil Ware or Jaquez. Richer is only going into year 3, but a team giving up on him is not a great scenario. You do get to kind of take that lottery swing on Kaminga, see if he can figure it out. So I do think this return is better than the Miami return. But it all hinges on if Atlanta's willing to do it. The other potential third team I've heard is New Orleans. I think that one is a bit trickier, just because so you probably do Jordan Poole's contract, because the Pelicans, I don't know that they could maybe trade Zion for him. That might make sense, actually. Let's explore that. So if they traded Zion, they could take back Miles Turner probably, and then they can give their pick to Milwaukee. Milwaukee's pick back. They'd be taking on too much money here, so you would have to finagle the money a little bit, which is doable because they have a good amount of contracts they don't really care about. So same return here. Giannis to the Celtics. That part stays the same. I attached Miles Turner just to get off that contract for the Pelicans, or to get off that contract for the Bucks. It's long-term money, so they get Jaylen Brown and Miles Turner. The Bucks get their pick back. It's that same New Orleans Milwaukee pick, so I can't remember if it's better or worse. Essentially, they're getting their pick back, and they get Zion along with it, and then they have to take on this expiring money that New Orleans doesn't want. So you're betting on Zion, but a Zion for Giannis swap maybe is a good bet for them. The reason the Pelicans would move on from Zion is they drafted Derek Queen, who's a similar, not only the same position, but a similar body type, similar playing style. Probably can't play them together since neither's a rim protector. So you would swap him with Jaylen Brown, who could come in and be your number one option right away. Miles Turner is kind of nice. They've signed Jamal Mosley, who's a defensive first coach. So you get a rim protecting center to go with Derek Queen, Jaylen Brown. You would still have Trey Murphy in that sense, and then DeJounte Murray probably be your starters with Herb Jones and Jeremiah Fears off the bench. You're $12 million under the tax here. You got to add a couple players. Oh, it has the player count here. So you're at 12 contracts. So you only have to add 2 players in that instance. So they could stay under the tax. The Pelicans have never paid the tax. So even adding a $50 million player, I think this would make sense. Problem here is we have no assets going to the Celtics. So we don't solve that problem. And then I think the Bucks would take this package, but could we get something more to the Celtics that the Celtics would want, essentially? And that something would probably have to be Trey Murphy. So if we do Trey Murphy could go into their trade exception, I believe. Yeah, he would fit in the Anthony Simons trade exception. So they could legally do it that way. The problem then is the Celtics are then flirting with the apron pretty hard here. So I think, no, because they use the trade exception. So I think they would have to send Hauser out here. But I think if they send Hauser out, then we'll just send him to the Pelicans here to make it easy. Okay, so the money works there. Okay, so in this instance, I think this is more favorable for both teams because the Celtics would love to have Trey Murphy. The Celtics would be at 11 players, and they would have to stay below this first apron because they're using their trade exception. But 3 minimum players is about half that $12 million. They have the 27th pick, which is more or less a minimum contract, so that gets you to 12, and then 2 minimum contracts, or a minimum contract gives you about 8, and you could spend. Then you could spend the whole taxpayer MLE of like $6.08 million on a player. you'd get to 14, and you'd have about $2 million in apron space. So that would make sense for the Celtics. They would still be a tax team, but I think you would be willing to pay that price. I think there is a chance the Celtics would want to be out of the tax this year to reset the repeater tax, as we've talked about in a previous video. So now the Pelicans are giving up Trey Murphy, Zion, and the 2027 unprotected first round pick to get Jaylen Brown. You get Miles Turner and Hauser along with it, which is decent, but it's a steep asking price. I think they might be a little more willing to do that than Atlanta. I think their package is better than Atlanta's. Milwaukee and Boston would both be happy with it. It's just a matter of if it's too steep for them. And you can't really get the best player or second best player in this case just because this is a crazy trade. And then say you need assets back along with it. That's a tough selling point. So it would just be a matter of if they're willing to reach. I'm just tongue-tied myself. If they're willing to reach that asking price to get it done. So those are the rumored Giannis trades. Who else would potentially be interested in Giannis? I think there's a chance Atlanta just straight up would want Giannis. They don't really have a rim protector on Okongwu. Tongue-tied myself again here. Maybe not the best day to do a video. Okongwu is not a real true rim protector. He's okay at it. So this would essentially just be the same package. So it's not... Probably don't even need to really redo this one. They would trade essentially the exact same thing here. They can maybe include Buddy Hield and take back like the Bobby Portis contract. Try to sweeten it that way. They give them number 8 and they could give them that 27 pick next year. And maybe you throw in a third, second. Although I don't know that you'd want to spend more on Giannis than you did for Jaylen Brown. So this is essentially the same contract here. We're using the Buddy Hield contract, just instead of waiving him, we're making Milwaukee eat that $3 million, which doesn't matter for them. They're way under the tax. They can afford to do that. And again, Atlanta's nowhere near the tax, so they can take on this much money. It's not really going to hurt them. I'm not sure Bobby Portis would have a role on this team because I don't know that you would play on Kongwu and Giannis together with Bobby Portis off the bench, but I suppose it's possible. Another potential Giannis team, I think, is Orlando. He has ties to Sean Sweeney, the new Orlando coach. And this would essentially be a Paulo for a Giannis swap. Problem is, Paulo makes $17 million less, so you would need to include more money here. Jonathan Isaac's not quite enough, and you also have to be able to fill the legal roster, which again, you'd be hard capped at the first apron, which right now they're $10 million over. So not only do you have to get under the first apron for this trade to be legal, you have to have enough money after that to then be able to fill the legal roster. So I think this is potentially where I'm doing my Bill Simmons rule here and talking about the Timberwolves. Jalen Suggs has been rumored as a potential player the Timberwolves would be interested in. And I think the heart of that rumor is if they were going to try to do something like a Giannis trade. Because you really have to like piecemeal stuff together. You have to do Anthony Black. You have to do Wendell Carter. You have to include pretty much all these mid-tier salaries to legally be able to do this. So let's go ahead and do the Bill Simmons rule and add Minnesota here. So we're gonna essentially just trade Jalen Suggs straight up for Julius because we're really just trying to do the Giannis video, not trying to turn this into a Wolves video. So then the Magic have more than enough money cleared here. I'm not sure if the Bucks. This is too much money for the Bucks now. So we almost need a third team. All right, so we're gonna just do the Julius to Chicago thing here. Again, because we're just focused on the Giannis part. So then it becomes, what can Washington give on top of Paulo? Or is Paulo all they would need to give? Because they don't have a tradable first, it looks like. I think they could technically trade their 2033 pick Fanspo doesn't have it on here. Oh, I think they could trade their 2031. So let's do the 31. Again, I don't know that they would have to give up a pick if they're giving up Paulo. Oh, they don't have the 30. All right, so they get the 32. And it doesn't like this for the... Oh, you have to manually come in here and renounce. All right. Let's renounce the 3 big ones, just so we can get that success check mark here. Perfect. All right, so in the scenario of Orlando getting Giannis, they are going to give up Paolo Banchero, Jalen Suggs. I put this 2032 first rounder on here, knowing that they're giving up Banchero and Suggs. Let's just take that off because that's way too much. That's not realistic. I think they would do Paolo and Suggs potentially for Giannis. If Sweeney really wants Giannis, then you kind of get to reset your salary here. So you're $14 million under the tax, and you're at 10 players. So you can potentially be an under the tax team. You could legally fill the roster under the tax here with Giannis, Franz, Anthony Black. What's our roster look like? Desmond Bain, Wendell Carter. So you would have... This would essentially be your starting 5 here. I got to scroll up a teeny bit here. Wendell Carter, Giannis, Franz, Desmond Bain, Anthony Black. And then you have Batatse, Da Silva, Jace Richardson, Kane off the bench. Plus whatever you would fill it in with. So that looks like a playoff roster to me. Is the ceiling that much higher? It's hard to say. The Bucks, they're just straight up swapping Paulo for Giannis. They take on Jonathan Isaac's contract. They can be the team that waives him, save the magic $8 million there. The Timberwolves, just to complete this trade here, the Timberwolves, they're just swapping Julius for Suggs straight up. They get their ball handler, 25 years old. He fits in with Ant, Jaden, and Nas. So this would be awesome for the Wolves. The Wolves probably have to kick in something. So maybe instead of the Magic giving up a pick, the 28th overall pick goes to Milwaukee. And then the Bulls get Julius Randle for free. He just goes straight into their cap space. So they get an all-star player for nothing, essentially. So it depends how much Milwaukee values Paolo there. If they think Paolo is better than any of these other packages, I think that makes sense. Otherwise, Orlando just can't really get there because Orlando gave all their picks up for Desmond Bain. I don't think Brooklyn makes sense. Cleveland is really tricky. We could try to do a Cleveland one. It's just we're going to have to do the same thing because they have to get far enough under the first apron here. So let's try it with Strus just to see where we're at. And we're still not there. So again, with Cleveland, James Harden's expected to restructure. He could maybe cut off as much as $10 million on this player option. So that 42 could probably going to get more to like 35, but maybe it could be 32. I don't think this is legal. I think we would need a third team, just because Milwaukee's taking back $23 million, which is just too much money. They would have to cut $8 million of that, so they could take back a good amount of change, just not that much change. So you would need to find a contender that would want Max Strus and could absorb Max Strus, or could at least trade $8 million for him and send that $8 million to Milwaukee. The Cavs, I think, could include their 2031 first round pick, but this is similar to the Paolo trade where it's how much do you value Mobley? Is this enough of a return for Giannis, essentially, is what that comes down to. I think that covers all the Eastern teams, so let's look at the West. So the Thunder, I just don't think it fits with them. The problem with the Thunder also is they're $22 million over the second apron, so they again would have to get under the first apron. So if we look at this here, that number is $39.8 million, and that is before their draft picks, who they would probably want to sign. This Utah pick is the 12th overall, the Philly pick is the 17th pick overall, and then this second round pick from Dallas is 37th overall pick. So they have 3 top 40 picks, probably want to roster all of them. Acquiring Giannis puts you at essentially minus 80 million in the second apron. Um, that's like, so they would have to cut $90 million essentially. It'd probably be more like 100 million because they have to pay the rookies. So to acquire Giannis, you have to trade out $100 million in salary. It's possible they have the draft picks to make that work. I think all their players that they potentially would trade, whether that's Jalen Williams or Chet or just all these contracts, Hartenstein, Caruso, Dort, Joe, Wiggins, Kendrick Williams, they could get there and they could potentially get positive assets for all those guys and then just trade a mother load of picks to Milwaukee. It's just so drastic for a team that, just won the title last year, went 7 with the Spurs. Should come back hungry. They're still so young. It just doesn't make sense for them. The Spurs, it would make a little bit more sense for, because they're not in that apron hell. They're 54 million under the first apron, so they could almost take Giannis by himself and be apron compliant. They would only have to send out 4 million. That's not a legal trade, but the difference is they would have to send out 4 million for Giannis instead of 100 million to make it legal. They have quite the collection of picks as well. The problem is, if I'm Milwaukee, I want Dylan Harper, I want Stephen Castle, and I'm not trading those guys if I'm the Spurs. And if those guys are off the table, you quickly are like De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, Kelvin Johnson, which are more role players than building blocks. Plenty of picks, so similar to the Thunder in that regard. They could come over the top and do it, and then you would have a Wembanyama Giannis front court, which no one would ever score on. No one would ever even go to the rim on you. So that is tantalizing. But again, the Spurs are just so young. Their window just opened. Although I agree, I subscribe to the philosophy that you should never just assume your window's going to stay open. I think if any team in history can do it, it's this Spurs team where their core 3 young players are all under 22. So let's move on to more of the real teams here. So let's look at the Lakers, just because the Lakers are always going to be involved in these kind of trades potentially. So the Lakers can potentially be a salary cap team. So this gets convoluted because it would probably involve a LeBron sign and trade just because you don't want to lose that asset. But just for the sake of this video, we're going to renounce LeBron's cap hold. We're going to renounce all these cap holds to make ourselves a cap space team. I don't think probably doesn't matter if I do all these, but let's just see how much cap space we could do theoretically here. As we talked about in a previous video, you only need to waive these cap holds when you're trying to make cap space. So that puts us exactly at the Giannis salary if we waive all those. So look at that. That's crazy. I didn't do that on purpose. $75,000 under the salary cap. Problem here is our roster is at 11. So we would have a minimum contract charge, which would put us $2 million over the salary cap. So we got to send something back. We have plenty of players we'd be willing to trade. I don't think the Bucks really care which players. So we'll send them Dalton Connect, and we'll send them Jared Vanderbilt, just for the salary purposes. And then Lakers picks, again, slim pickings here, but you could give the 31, you could give the 33. So not much here for Milwaukee. So you would probably have to also give Reeves. Let's put Reeves in the deal. Reeves will sign an extension. He won't play on this 14.8, but let's just include him asset-wise. You probably would also include whatever assets you get in the LeBron sign and trade, whether he goes to Golden State, Cleveland, wherever. Whatever assets you get back, even if it's just like second rounders, you would flip to Milwaukee in this hypothetical. So Milwaukee, it's similar to Orlando and Cleveland, where it's how high are you on Austin Reeves, really. The Lakers would give you the first-round picks, happily. The cap space doesn't mean much for you, but now you are one of those teams that can just absorb salaries, unwanted salaries, get draft picks back, so you get assets that way. So in a sense, the tax space. Oh no, this is tax space. This isn't even cap space. So yeah, that doesn't help you at all. That doesn't matter at all. So I don't think it's possible with the Lakers. Is the end story there. Houston. Yeah, let's look at Houston because Houston's an interesting one because Houston could give you Sengun, and then they could give you Jabari along with it, which is pretty interesting. They also have some tradable firsts. They probably want to include some of these bad picks as well, but we'll ignore that for now. So they give you their 28, and then they have some tradable 29s, I thought. I don't think it's going to let me do this, but this 29 is technically 2 picks. So you could do one of those because it's just not allowed because of the consecutive years here. So the Bucks could get Sengun, Jabari Smith, Houston's 28, and then the better of Dallas, Houston, and Phoenix is 29 for Giannis. I think Houston, would want to include some of their higher salaries as well, just because again the Bucks don't care about that money. The Bucks are at 13 players in this hypothetical trade, and they're 21 million under the tax. So they'd be willing to go up until that full tax amount. So you could include Steven Adams, Clint Capella, Dorian Finney-Smith in this trade, just to give yourself more wiggle room if you're Houston. But I think this framework makes a lot of sense if Houston wanted to do this. So then you would have a Giannis KD team is essentially your team. Your window's right now. You still have Ahmed Thompson, Reed Shepard. Maybe you'd have to throw Reed Shepard in here too. Although I think with Jabari being a former 3rd overall pick, Sengun being an all-star, and 2 first-round picks, that's probably better than every other offer we've talked about. It's just if Houston would want to do this, I think Milwaukee would take this. I don't know really where you're going with Sengun, Jabari Smith. It's a fairly low ceiling, but I think it's about as good as anything else you can potentially do here. You still have Ryan Rollins, who's probably more of a role player, but he's still only 23. My team, Minnesota, has always been rumored with Giannis. I think it's possible. It's just tricky, and it's just not enough assets ultimately, because I don't for a second believe we would include Naz Reid or Jaden McDaniels. I don't think that makes sense. So it would essentially be Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle for Giannis, which is similar to the Giannis for Jaylen Brown contract, where you're trading those guys elsewhere for assets, and then you get what those assets are back. But Rudy and Julius combined aren't getting the assets that Jaylen Brown is getting, that Jalen Suggs is getting. So if any of those are on the table, I just don't think it makes sense. The other big contender here is Portland. And Portland is the contender because they got the picks from Milwaukee in the Dame Lillard trade. With the lottery reform, it remains to be seen how much those picks are really worth. But they do have these tradable picks, so they can essentially just give Milwaukee their picks back. So Milwaukee would get their 20 and their 30 pick back. They could even get Portland's pick along with that. So instead of it being a swap, they just get both in both those years. Jeremy Grant's contract just to make the money match, and then they get Shaedon Sharpe on his new extension. Essentially is your guy on the poster right now. That's not great. And then you would have all your veterans still to trade. And Portland gets Giannis. Comes their poster child. You have Drew Holiday in place. You have Dame Lillard in place. So you have a lot of his former teammates. You keep Scoot in this scenario. You keep Klingon. You keep Kamara. So Portland kind of overnight would become a contender. I don't think they really be a real title contender, but they would be like a surefire playoff team. You still have to have Avdia too. I forgot Denny. So you have a legit like 6-7 guys there that all of a sudden make a lot of sense with Giannis. So I think Portland there hasn't been a whole lot of smoke on, but I think Portland will make a splash. I think with the new owner, especially with a new owner that got dogged on for months for being his cheap. I think trading for Giannis would make a lot of sense, and I think this is kind of the ideal scenario for the Bucks. I don't think this is the best return that we've discussed, especially with the lottery reform. How valuable are having your own picks really? But I think it's a home run for Portland. I think they would even potentially include Scoot in this deal, or Klingon, depending on how much you really think that sweetens the deal. They don't have a whole lot else to include. You can maybe squeeze another first rounder out of them. It's certainly better than Miami offer, which makes me think it's maybe not fully on the table, at least with all those assets attached, because right now you're only bidding against Miami. The rest of the league here, the Clippers don't have the assets. The Warriors will probably kick the tires on it, but it's just too convoluted for them. Dallas is rebuilding. Memphis is rebuilding. Sacramento's rebuilding. Utah is just too far away. So I think that's pretty much all the Giannis potential trades. My OBS is too big here, so I can't see how long I'm recording. We're at 40 minutes. Let's see if we can quickly cover another team. We kind of covered the Heat in a way. No, I think we're just going to call it there. All right. That covers Giannis. I don't think I can get every other team we haven't talked about yet in one video, but that's what we're going to shoot for next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.